Ever wish you had someone to talk to anytime, anywhere, no matter what you're going through? Meet PsychPal, your 24/7 AI companion designed to help you process your thoughts, calm your mind, and keep you moving forward. Chat anytime during a panic attack, on a restless night, or just when you need to vent. Prefer talking instead of typing? Try voice journaling. PsychPal listens, transcribes, and truly understands. You can even upload screenshots of tough conversations, and it'll help you unpack how they made you feel. PsychPal keeps life organized too. It can add appointments to your calendar, track your mood, and even summarize your sessions for your therapist so you'll never lose progress. Plus, built in crisis resources are always just one click away. It's a privacy first, constantly evolving, made to complement your professional care, not replace it. Ready to try it out? Head over to the link in this episode and use my code Pete at checkout to get 20% off your first month subscription to PsychPal. PsychPal, because your mind deserves a companion too. There we go. I think that's the one I like. We got it. We got it. Boom.
What do I do when life's so meaningless? What do I do when I just ain't feeling this? Anyone feeling this? Anyone feeling this? What do I do when life's so meaningless? What do I do when I just ain't feeling this? Anyone feeling this? Anyone feeling this? Meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. Desires not to exist.
Exciting episode of Pete for Anxiety. Before we get started today, let's give a shout out to my partners over at PsychPal. Guys, PsychPal, there's a link in the bio for this show. Go and check it out, guys. Take your free day 7 trial. If you like what you see, use my code Pete at checkout for 20% off your first month. With that being said, let's introduce my guest today. She's a licensed psychologist with 30 years experience, president of the BC Psychological Association, co-author of the 9-time award-winning book, Improbable and Extraordinary. Also the author of Through the Maze of Motherhood, Empowering Mothers Speak. She's also a former director of counseling services at Simon Fraser University. She's also the 2026 winner of Global Recognition Award for Excellent Achievement. Please welcome in the one, the only Dr. Erika Horwitz. Doctor, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I'm beyond honored having you here. Trust me. So Dr. Horwitz has actually sent me the book you see right in the background there. And I was telling her a little bit, I was reading a little bit about it. So, it's really good. Before we get into that, why don't you tell everybody a little more about yourself? I mean, you've been doing this for 30 years, man. That's an accomplishment in its own.
Yeah. Well, I just was lucky to choose a direction that was right for me, right? I fell in love with psych, my first psych class in university. And that was just to date myself. That was 1983 that I took that first class, and I just fell in love with psychology. And I've also myself, done a lot of therapy to heal my own early childhood traumas and issues. And so I have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in psychology. My focus is mainly psychotherapy. And my passion, really, I think my passion is service and helping. Even if I'm in a movie theater and I'm already sitting and people are trying to figure out where to sit, I start thinking I should move and help them. You know what I mean? So to me, pretty well, if you see my career and everything I've done, whether it's an individual room doing psychotherapy to, working on eliminating stigma, to writing this book with my brother, the purpose is always, can I make a difference? Can I help? Can I, help people transform their pain? So that's a big passion of mine. And so everything I do is so focused on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like I said, the book, absolutely am loving what I'm reading so far. Like I said, I started reading it when I got it the other day, and I've been reading it every chance I get. It's so interesting to see the perspective of what your brother was thinking, to get in his thoughts, for somebody that's going through these things. So like, how did you guys decide to write this book? Like, it had to be a struggle to get him to talk, because I know before we hit record, you were saying, you're like, hey, you got to speak from your own point of view so people can understand what your thought process is.
Well, the way that it all came about is that he's 3 years older than me. And he was a lovely little very curious little kid and very full of life. And of course, he's the oldest, so he was a leader. We have another brother in the middle. And then when he started adolescence around 12 or 13, things started changing. He started having troubles at school, troubles with sleep, and all kinds of different things. And gradually, we started losing him. Bear in mind, this is in the 70s, and there's no diagnosing. So, my dad was like, you're just lazy. You don't try hard enough. You don't stay with anything. My poor mother trying to get him out of bed. Right. And he describes now that his reluctance to get out of bed was extreme fear, which, extreme anxiety to just get out into the world. So as the years went by, and then I moved to Canada and he moved to another city in Mexico. So we haven't lived in the same city for a long time. So, we had our periodically we would talk on the phone or I would go visit. But he just kept deteriorating. He did get married. He had 2 kids. And, he was so unwell. It was so hard to be around him, Pete. Like he would talk a mile a minute, say inappropriate things, was not able to listen or have a conversation. It was really bad. And then about 10 years ago, I started visiting the city where he was living more frequently because I have a daughter that got married and moved there. And, I was like, what? Like, it was truly incredible that this person who was so hard to be around was now a centered, sensitive, good listener, full of wisdom. No. So after a few visits, I said, this is beyond incredible. I said, we got to tell the story. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I go, no, we got to tell the story. And it took a few years, right? Because with his bipolar disorder, he gets excited about something and then he kind of forgets why he was excited about it, right? But this book, he kept at it, right? He would write bits and then it would come to me and I would, because I'm a witness to it too. It was a really nice kind of working on it together. He did say that writing it, stirred him up at times. And every time I was working on it, Pete, I would say to my husband, oh my God, this is so amazing, so inspirational because I'm seeing him walking the walk and he didn't take medication, and I don't say people don't take medication at all. I think medication is helpful, but he didn't like how it felt when he first took it in his 40s. So he did all this without taking medication, which was to me the miracle of it all. Like, how do you do that, right? Yeah. So it was a real, again, for both of us I said to him, your story can make a difference. It will inspire. It'll give hope to people, whether they have an issue of mental health or they know somebody who does, or they just want to be inspired to believe that with hard work, you can transform your life.
Well, that too. Yeah. In the perspective we're getting is what it's like to be that person, and I think that's the hardest part for a lot of things, like I dated somebody with BPD and like understanding her point of view was my main goal was like, you know what, let me figure out what it's like for her on that side of the coin. And I think that when it comes to things like that and bipolar, people don't do enough research. We have these great things called phones. We don't use them for those positive things like looking up and understanding what this other person is dealing with. So him giving that perspective, it's great. Like I said, I've been reading the book and I'm enjoying it right now. So far, what I've been reading is great. I kind of skimmed through it a little bit just to see, but there's a lot of really interesting things in there. Those pictures of him when he was younger and all these really cool personal things you see as you go, but you get these perspective thoughts of what he was thinking in the moment, which is really cool because that's what a lot of people don't understand is like what these individuals are dealing with. But now he's unlocking it. And now your 9-time award-winning book, it's crazy. Like to think that he's like, he didn't realize, I don't think it's going to make difference. But you're like, yeah, it does. A story does make a difference. But, it's an award-winning piece now, man. It's just him sharing his thoughts. I mean, right there alone. And I agree, though, medicine works for certain people. Some people should be medicated. It has its place. But for him to do it without it, it's very impressive as well. To make a whole 180 turn because you said doesn't seem like the same person that you used to know. He's way different.
Oh, it's honestly, Pete, we wrote this book And along the way, I saw him walking the walk. It's not like he's just saying, and you will not read the book saying, oh, he doesn't say I'm fixed or I'm bitter. He doesn't say that in any part of the book. He'll say, he has a section in the second part where he's talking about his flaws. And there's a few pages of flaws. He doesn't have all of them, right? And he says, I still have these flaws, but now I have awareness and I know how to manage myself better and differently. And so he is, there's a lot of humility in how he tells a story. And I'll give you an example. We enter the book in many contests for awards. And, the first one was we were finalists. We made it to finalists. I go, oh my God, that's great. And then, we won for memoirs, for mental health, for addictions, for all kinds of different things. And we pronounce his name Saul, even though in English would be Saul. I go, Saul, aren't you excited? He'd say, yeah, but I have to be careful, right? I cannot let myself go there because bipolar disorder has one of the symptoms is grandiosity and a lot of ego. He says, I can't. Yes, I'm happy, but he wants the book to be successful, but he says he wants to be careful because he doesn't want to get wrapped up in those old patterns. And I'm like sitting there thinking, or when we were deciding on the cover, oh my goodness, it took so long, to find the right cover. And he would say, well, I like this. And I would say, but eventually he said, we narrowed it down and he said, you decide because I don't need to be the one deciding like I used to. It's just, honestly, I spend time with him and I call him now if I'm stuck. And I'm a psychologist, because he has so much wisdom.
Yeah.
And of course, after he got better, he did it in a group setting. So not in one-on-one therapy, in a group setting that is like an AA type group. They follow more or less the model of AA, but somewhat modified. They're kind of a little tough love. And so he, as he got better, he started helping other people with all that wisdom that he has. He doesn't have any degree in psychology, but he knows maybe as much as I do because he's obviously very intelligent and an avid student of the brain and psychology and very curious. So the transformation is truly nothing I've ever seen. In my years of working, and I was the director of a counseling service, I supervise many cases as well as the ones I've seen. And I'm sure there's other people that have achieved it, but I've never come across it. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's impressive though to hear that he went through all these things and he's helping other people and he's self-aware. He's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm excited for the book, but I don't want to give into the temptation because I know the flaw, which is, hats off to him because, most people aren't aware about these things, and don't know how to handle it like he does, it's really cool though. Like I said, though, as we go through the book and you start seeing these things, I think I did see the chapter where he was talking about his flaws. Cause like I said, I looked through it a little bit cause I was just kind of curious to see what's in the book and, before I really started reading it. And I saw a part where he was listing a bunch of things in there. So I'm going to say it's probably the part you're talking about, which I haven't gotten to yet, which I'm excited though to get to. Cause I'm like, I don't really read a lot of books, but let me tell you right now, this book, it's easy to read. Not a lot of things going on. You're reading his personal thoughts as you're going through this thing. And it's like you're there with him the whole time because, it's being written through the eyes of someone that's dealing with these things, And I love it though. I think for people in the category of mental health, for sure, it's better insight to the thought process of people, and I love it. I think it's great. I'm going to recommend it to a few people to check out, And like I said, I don't read a lot of books. I got to be honest with you, though. This one I picked up and I started reading a little bit at a time. I'm like, all right, yeah, this is all right, cool. Every chance I get, I'm like, all right, I got 10, 15 minutes. Let me read a couple more pages out of the book and go in anticipation of this interview. Cause I was like, and I get a lot of books sent to me and I try to read most of them. Some of them are just, yeah, they end up in that zone back there, the dead zone back there. But I mean, I respectfully appreciate the people sending them. I will do some research for the interviews on them. But, this is one I've really invested in because I started reading it because it's so interesting because I'm so fascinated to see what people's thought processes are and things. And then Sal's thought process is in this book so far we're reading. And I love it. I can only tell you it's going to be great. But I did notice in the back, there's some tests and stuff in the back too. That's really cool. What are those?
There's some what? Pardon?
There's stuff in the back of the book. What's that in the back of the book? There's a section in the back of the book. It's like, some kind of skills training or something.
Oh,
I can't
yes,
remember.
yes, in the back of the book. Well, the way that he wrote, we wrote it, and it was obviously his structure. The first half is he's describing how unwell he was in many areas of life. And the second half, he talks about how he healed, how he recovered. He uses the word
Okay.
recovery. We debated about, whether that was the word, but for him, that was the word. And he writes it number 1, miracle number 2, miracle number 3. He tells through the whole book that he used to be atheist. Now he's agnostic. He feels that there's something bigger, but not, it could be God, it could be karma. He doesn't know. But he used the word miracle. And as he's going, he describes some of the things that he did. Well, all the things that he did that he feels helped him overcome the chains of the bipolar disorder. And some of it is trauma work, right? So bipolar disorder, just to clarify for folks who may not know, is not something that is caused by life experience. People with bipolar disorder do come with a brain that's not functioning in the average way, right? And when you have a predisposition for a mental illness like that, and then you have life experience like trauma and loss, it combines to how bad it's going to get, right? So part of his work was to heal, and you'll read in the book, the different things that happened to him, some pretty horrid. So some of it, the work is supporting what we call the inner child, right? So I don't know if you come across that concept, right? Like, so when we're little and we
See,
have
the funny
trauma,
thing is, I talk to my inner child all the time.
Exactly. And so he has, at the end of the book, we included a process on how to heal the inner child. He does say throughout the book, this is not a self-help book. It's not how to tell you how to do, but it describes in more detail, what that is. But even things like, in that group, he would go every day to the group, and sometimes he would stand on the podium, and sometimes he would do service. And some of the service was to wash the floor. And he does not like washing floors. He's really good at cleaning kitchens and cooking and all kinds of stuff. But he was told, you want to wash that floor, imagining that God's going to walk on that floor. Like, that house. And the dedication, right? It becomes almost meditative, right? He said to me that one thing that made a huge difference for him was to do service for others, to get out of himself and to make his life about helping others. And so in that, and one little cool thing is that as I was working on the book, and he has miracle number 1, miracle number 2, and he's saying that it's not religious, but to him it felt miraculous. So I go and look up the definition of miracle, and there's the usual religious type, God granting a miracle. But the second definition was something that is improbable and extraordinary, unexpected, but that it comes to happen. And I said, well, that's the title of the book, because it was very improbable, honestly. I mean, but he was in his 40s when this thing started to shift. And it's extraordinary. So, and he said, oh, are you sure? Doesn't that make me sound conceited? I said, no, but that is, this was improbable and extraordinary. And the fact that he used that word to describe, the different things that he experienced that helped him grow.
Yeah. And a lot of people look at it being spiritual almost, because it's whatever that entity is. And, I tell people that too. It's like, you don't have to be religious. It's just whatever that higher power you feel is. It could be a spirit of some sort or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. It's whatever fits best for you. If you look at the Greeks had multiple gods. The Indians had multiple gods. It's whatever works best for you, what fits your best interest and things like that, So, I mean, hats off to him, though. I mean, it's helping people love it. Obviously people are loving it. It's a 9-time award-winning book. So clearly, when he wrote this thing, he had no idea what it was how impactful it was. But, I could get that though. I feel the same way though. It's like, I always want to help people, but mine came from because the fact I was abandoned when I was 10, so like that sense of making sure everybody feels community together, And instead of using it like a crippling thing, I use it as a superpower now because I want people to feel safe. That's the whole reason the show existed in the beginning, is because when I started this thing, I was more curious about my mental health and things like that. So I wanted to know if there are other people out there. And when I started it, there was a lot of responses to it. And then as we went on, I started learning things about myself, and different things. And I've had interactions with things I couldn't even explain. Just like, he's describing the miracles. Like I had some interactions, like I couldn't even tell you how it even happened, but it happened, what I mean? And things have changed for the better for me, though, as I've been going through all these different interviews and meeting different people and, learning different things about other things. It's always interesting what the conversations lead to, and things like that too. So, but yeah, I'm excited though. I really am excited to finish this book. I'm really cool. I'm really glad that you sent it to me so I can check it out. Cause I was like, I got it. I was looking at it. I kept staring at it across the room. I was like, I'm going to check this thing out. I'm going to check this thing out. So I looked at the back of the cover, started reading it. I was like, all right, let's go look through it a little bit, flip through it. Okay, I'm going to start reading this thing. So I got in there, started reading it. And I was like, okay, all right. And then it started drawing me in and I was like, all right, well, all right. Okay. I like this. So like I'll find time. I'll go outside and I got a patio right outside the window of the studio I'm at now. I'll go sit out there and read it. What are you doing? I'm reading the book for a little bit. Okay. And I'll just constantly reading these different books. And my mom's always looking at me weird, like, what are you reading? Like, oh, a different book I got sent to me, because I got all these packages that people send me. So like for different interviews and stuff. But when that book came in, it was drawing me in because I was like, man, I just kept looking at it like, dude, I really want to read this book. I don't know, something about it's drawing me to it. And I'm glad I started reading it. And like I said, I'm going to finish it. And I'll have to tell you my thoughts when I finish it completely. But I'm excited for it, though. I think it's great. I think what you guys did, the fact you inspired him to do it, though, and you pushed on him, hey, listen, you should do this. I think it was a really great example of just, how a story can matter to people, and all the people have read it, obviously are loving it at this point, and things like that, too. And the fact that he did it the way he did it, it's just proof that, even if you feel like medicine doesn't work for you, there is other options out there. Now, don't get me wrong, it has its place. But, I'm more the holistic side than anything now, seeing that all these different things you can do. But I mean, that doesn't mean it works for everybody, though.
Exactly. And, to me, the inspiring thing is just really instilling hope, right? That it doesn't matter how much you're struggling, you just reach out to someone, right? And some of these podcasts that like the one that you record, that might just get people started to feel that there's light at the end of that darkness. My brother describes what he calls suicidal crises, that he had.
Mm-hmm.
The first few times he said he didn't go ahead because he didn't want to do that to my mom. But those deep depressions in bipolar disorder, right? Those deep depressions where people feel completely hopeless. And then the mania that often leads to a lot of irresponsible, impulsive type behaviors.
Yeah.
In his case, there's people with bipolar disorder that are very successful academically or in jobs. His bipolar disorder really got in the way of being able to stick with school. He did have jobs and worked. He's very intelligent. So, whatever he tried, but the bipolar disorder would get in the way. So then the self-worth starts getting messed up, right? Between my dad putting him down because you're lazy, you're not consistent. And then, of course, we had a brother, my middle brother. So he's the oldest. And then my middle brother was that golden child, right? Perfect at school, perfect at karate, good with music. So then my older brother had that, everybody admired that middle brother. And he was kind of lagging behind because the bipolar disorder that was undiagnosed was getting in the way. And so his self-worth was also destroyed along the way, which really happens, right, to a lot of people with mental health issues where they're not keeping up with the rest of people. And so I think part of his transformation was also releasing all that trauma and releasing all that self-dislike. And honestly, I mean, he lives in a small little place with extreme humility. I mean, we come from a father who was very poor as a kid, but my dad made millions by the time we were teenagers. So we grew up with, moderate wealth or whatever. And now he lives in complete humility with, lower income, and just content. It's really, he's not quite Buddha, but, he was able to find inner peace and come to
Yeah.
terms with his life. And the other thing is that you mentioned a few minutes ago that, having awareness, self-awareness, I think that's his superpower now. Because I've been trying to, how do I conceptualize what he does? He has the ability to know when his brain is starting to go into depression or mania. He has an awareness, right? That he's irritable, or that because he says some of his mania is just very irritable agitation.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has the awareness, and he knows to tell people around him, I'm in a mania that's irritable, because that's his brain doing it, right? So don't mind me, or he knows to stay away. Honestly, it's the awareness, and then he has the tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knows what's happening. So for example, he says, I don't listen to my head anymore. I go, like, what do you mean? He says, before I did all this work on myself, my brain would get depressed, and then I had a narrative in my head. Oh, I'm all alone. Nobody loves me, blah, blah, blah. And so his mind would push the depression even
Yeah.
deeper. So he says now if he's starting to feel like that, he doesn't go there. He uses meditation. He uses, washing the floor, even though he still doesn't like it. Like, he'll wash the floor or he'll go help somebody, right? And then he prevents the depression from going down. And the other piece, I'm sure you've come across this whole neuroplasticity thing. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have scans of his brain, but I think what we understand in neuroplasticity now in psychology is that, in neuroscience, that when you do something over and over mentally, right, your brain adapts to being that way. So over the many years that he did that work and repeated what was helpful, like washing the floor or helping people or not listening to his head, over time, that becomes more of his default setting than the old setting. And so again, it speaks to the remarkable ability that we have as human beings to transform. And now we know that some of that transformation is at the brain level.
Yeah. It's almost like he reprogrammed himself, which I met somebody the other day. That's what she does. She goes into your subconscious and helps reprogram those little ticks and things that you don't like about yourself. It's a very serious process, the way she does it. But the way she does it, she goes in and she's very careful about it too, because especially when you're playing in the subconscious mind, you got to be really careful, because that's where a lot of that stuff is. And we've had a few neuroscientists on. One we were discussing where, negative self-talk actually has another part of your brain it sits into, which was very interesting to find out, and things like that. So I'm always fascinated when people start telling me about neuroscience things, because I'm like, it's so fascinating to hear the studies that what people are doing and how they're doing things, and it's always interesting because a lot of it's like building a pattern. So he's retraining his brain to do a different pattern than what it would normally do, which is it really makes sense. So honestly, because a lot of times we're creature of habits, a lot of us will do the same things and won't break that habit at all. It'll just be the same thing regardless, good or bad, we're still doing them.
Yeah. It's, to me, it's, inspiring really that he managed to do that. And honestly, I think, Pete, you would agree that all of us want to experience inner peace and contentment in our lives, right? And so many things get in the way of that. And he, honestly, it's been many years now that he's been maintaining this. So it's not a fake, he doesn't have the
Mm-hmm.
grandiosity of I'm perfect. And on the contrary, very, very humble. And for me, Pete, it was like, I think my other brother and I, we felt like we lost him once he became an adolescent, right? Like, he was in his head. He would stay up all night, which is common for people with bipolar disorder, and then sleep till 3 p.m, didn't want to go to school. And then all those years where his behaviors and the way he was were just made it really hard to want to be around him. And then I started spending this time with him in the last 10, 12 years. And I feel like I got my brother back, and an improved version of that brother that can he's loving and helpful, full of wisdom, and just lives really well, embracing the life he has, which is, he's divorced. I think he talks about that in the book. He's divorced, has 2 kids that are grown, but neither of them lives in the city where he lives. And, goes to these groups still to help people. The other day he was telling me he was feeling pretty depressed, which doesn't really happen much. Again, the awareness. He went to the group, stood on the podium, and spoke about what his head was doing, what his mind was doing, and he turned it around.
Mhm.
Right? So his brain will still want to sneak in there and, start a depression or a bit of mania.
Yeah.
But he keeps maintaining that balance and living fully content on his own in this little town by himself. I don't know that I could. I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of healing. I'm a psychologist. I don't know that I could. That's how advanced I feel. Like he's very evolved. He's become a very evolved being.
Yeah, and that's a possibility for other people, though. He sets the example that just because you have bipolar or something doesn't mean you're going to you can't let it defeat you. Because if Saul can do it, I mean, there's possibility for anybody to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever he was doing is working. And it leads people to believe that they can do it too. But I mean, because they can really, and that's what people need these days. It's like they need some positive, reinforcement, not negative, because there's so much negativity out there, especially with the internet and everything like that. All these things you say, all this misinformation out there. It's great to hear that somebody comes from such a humble beginning, and he's just kind of happy just doing whatever. He's almost like Buddha a little bit, because he just really is just like, all right, well, I really help other people. I really don't need all this other stuff. I'm just happy with just being me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I feel so much admiration for what he's done, and it's for people like me. So if you have listeners that are psychotherapists, psychologists, therapists, again, right? It just really emphasizes that people can transform.
Hmm.
Right? That with the right guidance and support, in his case, he was in a group, although he did get, how the A groups have like a sponsor. In Mexico, they call them, where he lives, they call them godfathers. So he got a godfather that's like the sponsor. And I think he chose the sponsor. But I think he got lucky. He was just a tough love, like a little tough love there, but just very wise, that was able to. One particular story he tells in the book that I just felt so enamored with. The sponsor said to him one day, this is, quite a bit after he had been working on himself. He says, "Do you pray?" And Saul went, yeah, I pray. "What do you pray for?" "Well, I pray that, that God helps me, or the universe helps me to be a better person and to heal." And the guy scolds him and says, "Yes, that's so self-centered. No. I want you to go on your knees every night and you pray for other people. You pray for the real people that need prayers, those people that are starving, or the people that are ill, or whatever." And then he tells a story of how we were not raised religious, but he literally went on his knees and put his hands together on his bed and just prayed for other people. And it's it really is this thing about getting out of yourself. People with mental illness often are very centered in themselves because they're suffering so much. And so just little lessons like that, like wash the
Yeah.
floor. God's going to walk on it, or, just go pray for other people. And he got scolded. And he did that, and he did that many nights. And all those things transformed him from the self-centered, grandiose, to expanding himself, that almost changing his worldview, right? On what is really important in the world. My niece and nephew grew up with him, while he was in the midst of this whole bipolar thing. And I've talked to my niece, his daughter, and she's also said to me, "Tia, like it's, I feel like I got my dad." And they're close now, and they're able to connect. And my brother's able to be a support to her.
Yeah.
that perhaps when she was growing up, he wasn't, right? So the transformation seeps to the people around him, certainly for me and, and his kids. So it's a gift to him, but when people heal, it's a gift to those around them as well.
Yeah, and people notice it too. Like she said, I got my dad back finally, from what she's seen to where he's now.
Mhm.
It's great to hear from him though. I'm so happy that he's found peace and he's in a better place and he's focusing on helping other people too because it's hard. I think that's where a lot of people lose their sense of human is at that point is that we forget that we're all humans at the end of the day and we don't show enough compassion to each other. And it's
Yes.
it's really sad these days. It's like it kills nothing to be kind to somebody, but we can't do that. We have to always bring each other down for whatever reason. And it's really despicable because, especially people with mental health issues, people that don't really get it, they always have some kind of comments they want to make. Oh, well, go get therapy or you should go to the hospital, this and that. It's like, oh, that's great, but you're not helping the situation, and then I just feel like, people don't talk about it enough because they don't understand enough of it, and that was the goal from the beginning of the show is to raise awareness and break the stigma around the whole thing because people always have something to say, but they don't know anything about it, or they'll judge things they don't know and they'll say these wild things. And I've had people on this show that tell me some wild stories of things that people have said to them. We had a woman come on and say that she was sexually assaulted and somebody was making fun of her. Like, how do you make fun of somebody who didn't choose these things? You know what I mean? It's like no logic behind it. You're just being a straight up asshole for no reason to people. It's like, we don't need all that. We got enough going on. We don't need you to be terrible to these people. Yes, you may not understand the things these people have gone through and the things they deal with, but, have a little compassion for once in your life. It's not really that bad to be nice to somebody. Oh, hey, you may not understand they're going through, but, hey, listen, I'm so sorry you're going through it doesn't kill you to be nice to somebody, just say something like that, you know what I mean? And it's just,
Absolutely.
the internet drives me crazy sometimes because for a while, those suicide videos where they're like, well, if you take your life, after you take your life, there'll be 10,000 phone calls. And I'm like thinking, you have no idea what you're saying, do you? Like, the level of just like ignorance being said in this video makes no sense. Like, you're not helping anybody. In fact, you're making the message even worse because what you're telling them is that, okay, even if you kill yourself, we don't care you're gone. It's like, it's like I don't think people think before they put some of these videos out. Everything's too clickbait worthy for me. And it just drives me nuts when you see people posting those videos because I'm like, every time I see it, I get mad. I'm like, you really have no idea what it's like being there, do you? And it's, and it to me, it's just like, insensitive level. And I get people are trying to do something positive, but you're really not with those videos. Please stop posting those things. They're not helpful. People in that state of mind, and Dr. Erika could tell you the same thing. They're that's not probably not helping whatsoever. You're not helping them. Their whole idea, a lot of them is that they feel like they're not wanted. And that says right there is that, okay, well, if you do it, life will still move on without you. And that's not what we want these people to know. We want them to know they're not alone and that that we want them here. We don't want them to go. We don't want to give them any reason to think why they should go, and it won't matter if they're gone, And to me, it's just like, I get so mad though every time I see those videos. Like I said, this just drove me nuts. I go on these tangents with people, and they're like, "Well, guess Pete, you saw one of those videos." I'm like, "Yeah, I did. And I'm tired of seeing these damn things." So,
Yeah.
but it's just because I've been there. I know what it's like. I've been in the edge, and to me, it's insulting that you're putting this kind of crap on the internet. And to me, it's almost like you're making a joke of the situation, even though I know a lot of these people aren't. They just don't understand what's going on 100%.
It's irresponsible, really. When I was working at the university, we do a lot of suicide prevention there. And there's a quote, I'm not sure who came up with the quote that we used in our presentations. And we said, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Right. And we used to talk about it feels you're in a crisis at the time that you're considering taking your life, but it is temporary for the majority of people.
Mm-hmm.
A crisis is temporary. I mean, my brother talks in the book about many of his suicidal crises and, his how he used to fantasize about how he would take his life. And thankfully, he never attempted. But the thankfully, he didn't attempt, right? Because look at
Yeah.
look at the gift he's given people by not only not attempting, but transforming his life and being able to instill hope in others. Right? So those lives that are lost to suicide are wasted, really, because some people live with chronic, like bipolar disorder is a chronic disorder, right? That messes with people's minds. Same with people that have, chronic depressive episodes. They start feeling hopeless. But there's so much in science now and medications as well that can actually help people transform and feel better. And so, our big message is reach out when you're, when you're feeling on the
100%
edge,
agree.
when you're feeling like you're giving up, reach out, right? Reach out to someone, and get over that crises, right? That moment, those days that feel like that. Because, I believe that all lives are, you and I were talking about this anti-stigma campaign I had come up with, but one of the things that we wanted to communicate in eliminating stigma is that everybody's life has something to give and contribute, right? And so that we need to not reduce people to the diagnoses, and seeing them in this larger way that they are, right? Like I wrote the foreword in the book, and I talk about how, my brother used to be very protective of me. I was very lucky being the youngest of three because, boys behave themselves around me because I had these two big brothers. But, he was there was a boy in grade 3 that kept bugging me and hitting me on the arm. And I told Saul, and Saul went to and found him and said, "You've been bothering my sister." And the guy said, no, you are. And you stop bothering her or you're going to answer to me. Of course, my brother's 3 years older than this kid, or 4 years older and bigger. The kid behaved, so he had so much love to give and so on. And then, as we saw, this bipolar disorder hijacked him in a way, but for people to see that we see their essence, we see their beauty, we see their soul, and when you embark in healing, you can peel those layers so that you can reconnect with that essence that you are.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Erika, before we start wrapping up, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Now, I ask all my guests these same 2 questions, okay? So the first one's a little bit of a fun one that we borrowed from a friend of ours. The question to you is if your mental health had a song, what would you say that song would be? This is a really fun one, though. I'm telling you, a lot of people love this question.
If my mental health was a song,
yep, what would that song be?
I Will Survive. First, I was afraid. I was terrified.
I love it.
Thinking I could never live without you by my side. It's even though that song is for somebody that left you, we can think of it as, my mental health left me. Yeah. And I took my power back, right? So right. I would say that one.
I love it. Okay, so now here comes the main question and the reason I started this podcast, okay? If you could break the stigma about mental health, now anything that you hear on a daily basis that you just want people to stop believing, what would you say that one thing would be?
That we are all in the world of experiencing troubles of mental health. It's not an us and them, them, the people that are mentally ill and the rest of us. No. All of us experience struggles of mental health, from feeling very stressed or overwhelmed to grief at times when somebody dies or you lose something and you feel very upset. That's a mental health, right? To people that perhaps have an addiction to something, all the way to the diagnosable mental illnesses. We're all in the same boat. Eliminating stigma to me is to see that. And the other thing, you said one, but I'll say a second one, is speak about it. Like, just speak about it, because you know how there's a closet for, that the LGBTQ community talks about? I think this is another closet where if people have any issue of mental health, they are struggling to hide it because it isn't safe in the world. But the more of us that talk about it, I talked about my brother. I have had a pretty bad depression when I finished my PhD, which was weird. It didn't make sense, but where I ended up having to take medication. And I tell people, like, I tell my patients, yeah, I've taken medication, because I think the more that we talk about it, the more that we are out of that closet, the more it will be normalized, right? That this is just part of being human in the world.
I agree. Well, Dr. Erika, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me. It was a pleasure meeting you, and it's a pleasure getting to know you. Before we sign off, do you want to let me know where to find you guys? I will include all these links she's about to list for you in the bio, so you can go check out the book and everything else.
Right. So the book is called Improbable and Extraordinary, A Transformation of Mental Illness and Addiction. And the website for the book is improbableandextraordinary.com. So pretty easy to remember. I have some interviews with my brother there. I have, summary, all kinds of stuff there that you can take a look at. And then if people want to find me separately, my website is mindfulness, V as in Victor, R.com. So it's mindfulness, and YVR is the airport acronym for Vancouver in Canada. So some creative person say, why don't you just call it? Because, I do a lot of the mindfulness therapies and I'm a certified mindfulness teacher. So those are the two places where they can find us.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. It was great getting to know you. Dr. Erika will be back for another special collaboration, guys. So stay tuned for that one, though. But with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. You know where to find me on Pete vs. Anxiety X, all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify, all the way down to Pandora Radio. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do could save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health?